Every Sunday in 1955, Britain stopped. Shops closed, streets emptied, and the smell of roasting beef drifted through every terrace, every council estate, every village lane. The Sunday roast was not just dinner, it was law. Unwritten, unbroken, and understood by every family from Aberdeen to Penzance. But somewhere between frozen Yorkshires and Deliveroo, we lost something. Not just the food, the rituals, the rules, the unspoken codes that turned a simple meal into the anchor of British life. Number 14 on this list was so important that families who broke it were genuinely talked about by neighbours. And number 3 disappeared so completely that most people under 40 have never even witnessed it. Before we start, subscribe, because this is the history of your family table. Let us count down the 25 Sunday roast traditions that vanished from British life. Number 25. The Saturday night joint selection. Before supermarkets wrapped everything, Saturday afternoon meant a trip to the butcher. Your mother stood at the counter, studied the cuts hanging on hooks, and asked his opinion. He knew her family. He knew her budget. In 1954, a decent joint of beef cost around 3 shillings and 6pence a pound, and choosing the right one shaped the entire week's meals. The butcher would trim it, tie it, wrap it in brown paper, and hand it over with instructions. Roasted fat side up, love. 20 minutes per pound and 20 minutes extra. That relationship guided every roast for a generation. When supermarkets arrived with pre-packed trays and sell-by dates, the conversation died. The skill of choosing meat by sight, by feel, by the butcher's quiet nod, vanished with the high street shops that closed at over 1,000 a year through the 1980s. Number 24. The oven timing ritual. Your mother could time a 3-course Sunday dinner using nothing but instinct and a clock on the mantelpiece. No timers, no apps, no thermometers. She knew a 4-pound chicken needed an hour and 40 minutes at gas mark 5. The potatoes went in 90 minutes before serving, the parsnips 60 minutes before, and the Yorkshire pudding 20 minutes before. Everything converged at 1 o'clock precisely. If you were late, you ate it cold. Ministry of Food leaflets in the 1940s taught women to plan oven use to conserve fuel, and those habits stuck for decades. The kitchen became a command center every Sunday morning. Modern ovens beep and flash reminders. But nothing replaces the quiet confidence of a woman who could land 6 dishes at the same moment using nothing but memory and a wooden spoon tapped twice on the oven door. Number 23. Dripping from last week's roast. The roasting tin came out of the oven, and the fat was sacred. Your mother poured every drop through a sieve into a ceramic bowl, and that golden dripping sat on the kitchen shelf until the following Sunday, when it went straight back into the next roasting tin. Potatoes were parboiled, shaken rough in a colander, then tumbled into that smoking hot dripping. The result was roast potatoes with a shatter and crunch that modern vegetable oils simply cannot produce. By the 1970s, health campaigns vilified animal fats, and families across Britain threw out their dripping bowls. The replacement oils, first sunflower oil and later rapeseed oil, produced potatoes that were golden but soft. Pleasant, but never legendary. A study in 2020, published in the Journal of Nutritional Science, revisited decades of fat research and concluded that the link between moderate saturated fat consumption and heart disease was far less clear than previously claimed. Your grandmother's dripping was not just tastier. The science is catching up to what she already knew. In the 1950s and the 1960s, the kitchen on Sunday morning was sovereign female territory. Father did not enter. Sons did not loiter. The man of the house might carve the joint at the table, but the cooking belonged to the women. Oral histories describe fathers reading the Sunday paper in the front room, occasionally shouting through to ask what time dinner would be ready, and receiving a look through the serving hatch that silenced further questions. Children who wandered in were handed a task or sent away. The kitchen was small, the oven was hot, and the woman running the show needed space. As gender roles shifted through the 1970s, men slowly entered the kitchen. Today, Sunday cooking is shared, which is progress. But the image of one woman commanding the kitchen with total authority has gone entirely. Number 21. Best china for Sunday. The dining table on Sunday was set differently from every other day. Out came the good plates, the ones kept in the sideboard and only used for roast dinner and Christmas. Matching china, proper napkins, and the gravy boat that wobbled but had belonged to your Nan. In 1958, a survey by the British Pottery Manufacturers Federation found that over 70% of households owned a separate set of Sunday china. Children learned early not to chip those plates. Mothers polished them before laying. The meal was elevated from ordinary weeknight tea to something ceremonial, simply by the crockery it was served on. When casual dining took hold in the 1980s, the best china migrated permanently to the back of the cupboard. Families ate off the same plates every day. The ritual of setting a proper table, a weekly act of quiet pride, disappeared. Those wedding gift dinner sets now sit untouched in charity shops across the country, waiting for a tradition that will never return. Number 20. Grace. Before the meal, before a single fork was lifted, many British families said grace, not always religious. Sometimes just a quiet moment of thanks. Heads bowed, hands clasped or flat on the table, and the eldest or the father would speak a few words. For what we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful. By the mid-1960s, surveys suggested that nearly half of British households observed some form of grace at Sunday dinner. It was not always solemn. Children fidgeted, fathers mumbled. But the pause before eating created a boundary between the rush of the morning and the calm of the meal. It signaled that this food mattered. That effort had gone into it, that sitting together meant something. As church attendance fell through the 1970s, grace faded from the table. Today, fewer than 1 in 10 families pause before eating. The food arrives, and forks move immediately. That moment of collective stillness, brief as it was, has gone. Number 19. The father carving the joint. The joint arrived at the table whole. Not sliced in the kitchen, not proportioned. It sat on the serving plate, steaming, and the father stood to carve. This was his role, his one contribution to the meal, and it carried genuine ceremony. He would sharpen the carving knife on a steel with theatrical strokes, assess the joint, then slice with the focus of a surgeon. Thick slices for the men, thinner for the children. The best cut, the outside edge with the crispy fat, went to whoever had earned favor that week. In many homes, the carving set was a wedding gift, kept in a velvet-lined box and brought out only for Sundays. By the 1980s, joints shrank. Chicken portions replaced whole birds. Pre-sliced meat appeared on supermarket shelves. The act of carving at the table, that small theater of fatherhood, faded until it existed only at Christmas. Most men under 40 have never carved a joint in front of their family. The skill and the ritual died together. Number 18. The washing up rota. After the roast, somebody had to face the devastation. Roasting tins caked in fat, saucepans crusted with potato starch, the gravy pan, the Yorkshire tin, mountains of plates and serving dishes that no dishwasher could handle, because most homes did not have one until the late 1980s. In many families, washing up was assigned by strict rotation. Father washed because he had not cooked. Children dried. Mother put away because only she knew where things went. The ritual could take 40 minutes, and the conversation during washing up was often livelier than the meal itself. Gossip surfaced. Plans were made. Arguments that had simmered over lunch boiled over at the sink. When dishwashers became standard, the rota dissolved. Plates went in, the door closed. And that 40-minute window of family conversation vanished with the soap suds. Number 17. The pudding course was non-negotiable. Sunday dinner without pudding was unthinkable. You could skimp on the starter. You could stretch the meat with extra vegetables. But pudding was mandatory. Apple crumble with custard. Spotted dick. Treacle sponge. Bread and butter pudding made from Saturday's stale loaf. In 1960, surveys showed that 9 in 10 British households served a homemade pudding every Sunday without fail. The pudding was often the part children looked forward to most, and mothers used it as leverage throughout the meal. No pudding unless you finish your greens. That single sentence governed childhood behavior at tables across the country. Today, Sunday pudding has been replaced by a yogurt from the fridge or a biscuit with a cup of tea. The tradition of a proper homemade dessert as the crowning act of Sunday lunch has faded almost entirely. Supermarket trifle is not the same. It was never the same. Your mother did not buy mint sauce. She made it, homemade. Fresh mint from the garden, chopped fine on a wooden board, mixed with sugar and malt vinegar in a small jug. The scent of cut mint filled the kitchen, sharp, green, and unmistakably Sunday. A bunch of mint cost nothing because it grew like a weed beside the back step, and every household with even a window box kept a clump alive. The preparation took 5 minutes, but the ritual mattered. Children were sometimes sent to pick the mint, returning with fistfuls of leaves and muddy knees. By the 1980s, jars of ready-made mint sauce appeared on supermarket shelves. Coleman's and own-brand versions offered convenience, but the flavor was sharper, more acidic, and lacked the fresh sweetness of hand-chopped leaves. Within a decade, the mint plant by the back door became decorative rather than functional. The jug of homemade sauce, its vinegar-stained glass a permanent fixture on the Sunday table, simply disappeared. Number 15. 1 o'clock sharp. Sunday dinner was served at 1 o'clock. Not 1:15, not 1:30, 1 o'clock. The timing was so rigid that families planned their entire morning around it. Church at 10:30. Home by 12:15. Table laid by 1:45. Coats off, hands washed, seated by 1. In some households, latecomers found their plate already served and cooling. In others, the door was simply locked. Oral histories from the 1950s recall fathers glancing at the clock, children scrambling from the garden, and mothers delivering the universal warning, 5 minutes. That weekly synchronization kept families tethered to a shared rhythm. As working patterns changed, Sunday shifts appeared, shops opened, and the fixed meal time dissolved. Families began eating in shifts, at 2, at 3, whenever people drifted home. The 1 o'clock rule, simple and absolute, was one of the first traditions to fall. Number 14. No telephone calls during dinner. The telephone sat in the hallway, and if it rang during Sunday lunch, it was ignored. Not silenced. Not checked. Answering the phone while the family was eating was considered rude in a way that is difficult to explain to a generation raised on smartphones. Everyone in the street knew that Sunday dinner was sacred time. If you telephoned between 1 and 2, you were the problem. Neighbors who broke this rule were discussed. Relatives who rang during the meal were reminded firmly not to do it again. This unwritten law created an hour of genuine disconnection. The family existed only with each other. No interruptions, no distractions. When mobile phones arrived, that boundary crumbled overnight. Today, phones sit on the table next to the salt. The idea that a meal deserves unbroken attention, that the people at the table matter more than whoever might be calling, has become almost quaint. Sunday vegetables followed a strict, unwritten formula. You had your roast potatoes, you had your boiled or steamed green, usually cabbage, Brussels sprouts or peas, and you had your root vegetables, carrots or parsnips or swede. 3 vegetables. Always. Not 2, not 5. 3. This was not a nutritional calculation. It was tradition. The plate had 3 zones: meat, potatoes, vegetables, and the vegetables came in a supporting pair alongside the potatoes. Adventurous additions were viewed with suspicion. A broccoli floret in 1965 was practically foreign. Courgettes were not seen on Sunday tables until the late 1980s, and even then they were questioned. The rigid trio meant that every family in Britain ate essentially the same meal every Sunday for decades. It was not limitation. It was liturgy. Today, roast dinners feature sweet potato, tender stem, charred peppers, and whatever else looks good at the farmer's market. Variety replaced ritual. The holy vegetable trinity dissolved. Sunday's roast was not 1 meal. It was 2. Monday's tea was built entirely from what remained. Cold cuts of beef or lamb with pickles and bread. Bubble and squeak fried from leftover potatoes and cabbage. Shepherd's pie if the remains were minced. The bones went into the pot for stock. In the 1950s, the National Food Survey showed that over 60% of families planned Monday's meal around Sunday's leftovers. Nothing was thrown away. The roast was designed to produce surplus, and the surplus was designed to feed the family again. Children expected cold meat on Monday as surely as they expected school. This was the engine of working-class thrift, a 2-day cycle that stretched every shilling. When portion sizes shrank and Sunday dinners moved to pubs and restaurants, the leftover system collapsed. Modern families rarely cook a joint large enough to generate remains. Monday's tea became its own separate shopping trip, and the elegant economy of the 2-meal roast vanished. Number 11. The Yorkshire pudding as starter. In Yorkshire and across much of the north, Yorkshire pudding was not served with the meat. It was served before it. A large risen pudding was placed on the table first, drenched in onion gravy, and eaten as a separate course. The purpose was practical and ingenious. Fill up on cheap batter and gravy so the expensive meat stretches further. 1 egg, 1 cup of flour, and 1 cup of milk made a Yorkshire pudding. It could take the edge off the hunger of 6 people before the joint was even carved. By the 1970s, this tradition had retreated almost entirely. Southerners had always served Yorkshire pudding alongside the meat, and as national food culture became more uniform through television and supermarkets, the northern starter tradition was absorbed into the southern method. Today, the idea of eating Yorkshire pudding before the main course strikes most people as odd. But for families counting every penny, it was the most brilliant piece of culinary economics in British history. Gravy was not made from granules. It was built. Your mother scraped the roasting tin, added flour to the meat juices and fat, stirred until it darkened, then slowly poured in the vegetable water and a splash from the kettle. The whole process took 10 minutes of constant stirring, and it happened in a cloud of meaty steam that coated the kitchen ceiling. The gravy had to be smooth, thick enough to coat the back of a spoon, and plentiful. Running out of gravy was a domestic crisis. Some mothers added a crumbled OXO cube for depth. Others used a splash of Worcestershire sauce. The method was passed mother to daughter without ever being written down. When Bisto granules arrived, promising gravy in 30 seconds, the real thing retreated. Today, fewer than 1 in 4 families make gravy from the roasting tin. The rest pour from a jug of reconstituted powder, never knowing the deep, complex flavor they have traded for convenience. The dining table had an order. Father sat at the head. Mother sat nearest the kitchen so she could fetch and carry without disturbing anyone. The eldest child sat to the father's right. The youngest sat where spills would cause the least damage. Guests, if there were any, were given the chair with the cushion. This arrangement was fixed. Children who sat in the wrong seat were moved without discussion. The hierarchy communicated something unspoken about family structure, about respect, about knowing your place in a household. When families migrated from dining tables to sofas, when trays replaced place settings, when eating became casual rather than ceremonial, the seating order dissolved. Today, most families do not have assigned seats. The quiet architecture of the Sunday table, where position meant something, belongs to another era. Number 8. Starched white tablecloth. On Sunday, the bare wooden table vanished beneath a white tablecloth. Ironed. Starched, spotless. Your mother spent part of Saturday evening pressing that cloth with a heavy iron, smoothing every crease until it lay flat and gleaming. A cotton damask tablecloth cost about 5 shillings in 1952, a genuine investment, and it was treated accordingly. The white surface transformed the kitchen table into something formal. Meals eaten on a tablecloth felt different. They demanded better behavior, better posture, better manners. When wipe-clean mats and bare tables became normal in the 1980s, the starched cloth was folded away. The effort of laundering it every week, the pride in its whiteness, the transformation it brought, all of it vanished. Number 7. Children seen and not heard. The Sunday table enforced a code of conduct that would strike modern parents as severe. Children did not speak unless spoken to. Elbows stayed off the table. Cutlery was held properly, knife in the right hand, fork in the left, tines down. You did not begin eating until the eldest had started. You did not leave until everyone had finished. Breaching these rules earned a sharp word or a clip around the ear. Sunday dinner was an occasion, and occasions demanded discipline. The rules taught children restraint and patience. They also produced meals that were stiff, silent affairs where children counted the minutes until they could escape to the garden. As parenting styles relaxed through the 1970s, the rigid code softened. Today, children talk freely at the table, which is healthier. But the idea that a meal is an occasion requiring composure has quietly disappeared. Number 6. The Sunday morning preparation. Cooking Sunday dinner was an all-morning project. Your mother was in the kitchen by 8:30, peeling potatoes, preparing vegetables, seasoning the joint. Radio 2 played in the background. The oven warmed the house. Children were dispatched to lay the table or stay out of the way. By 11, the joint was in. By 12, the potatoes went around it. This commitment of time, 3 to 4 hours every single Sunday, was an act of devotion that went largely unacknowledged. Mothers simply did it. When ready meals, pub lunches, and restaurant roasts offered an alternative, the long morning was the first thing women chose to abandon. And who could blame them? But with it went the particular atmosphere of a house slowly filling with the smell of a meal being made with care. Number 5. The walk after dinner. After the plates were cleared, the family walked. Not drove, walked. Around the block, through the park, along the canal towpath. The walk settled the stomach, gave the house time to air, and provided the only exercise many families took all week. In the 1950s, parks across Britain were crowded on Sunday afternoons, with families walking off roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. Children ran ahead. Parents strolled. Grandparents followed slowly. The walk was conversation time and a gentle transition between the formality of dinner and the quiet of Sunday evening. As television schedules expanded and car ownership made driving easier, the neighborhood walk died. Today, the post-roast walk survives only as an occasional moment, not the weekly ritual it once was. Number 4. The pub closed until 3. Until the Licensing Act reforms of the 1980s and 1990s, pubs across Britain closed between 3 and 7 on Sundays. This was not inconvenience. It was architecture. The closure meant Sunday dinner happened at home, without exception. Father might have a pint before lunch, walking to the local at 12:30 and returning by 1, but the meal was always at home. When pubs began serving Sunday roasts themselves from the late 1980s onward, the home-cooked roast faced its first real competitor. Today, the Sunday pub roast is a multi-billion-pound industry. Families who once cooked together now book tables. The tradition of eating at home, not because you chose to, but because the entire country was structured to make it the only option, belongs to another era. Number 3. The roast smell through the house. This is the tradition nobody talks about because it was not a practice. It was a sensation. The smell of a roast dinner filled the house for hours. It seeped into curtains, settled into carpets, and drifted out through open windows to announce to the entire street that Sunday was happening. You could walk down a terrace row and tell who was having beef, who was having lamb, and who was having chicken, just from the air. The aroma was communal. It connected households without a word being spoken. When extractor fans, sealed kitchens, and open-plan living arrived, the smell was contained, captured, and vented away. Modern homes are designed to prevent cooking odors from lingering. The very thing that once unified a street, that made Sunday roast a shared neighborhood experience, has been engineered out of existence. Number 2. 3 generations at one table. Sunday dinner was the one meal when grandparents, parents, and children sat together. Nan and Grandad walked over or were collected in the car. They had their seats. They had their preferences. Grandad liked his beef well done. Nan needed her carrots soft. The meal brought 3 generations into the same room, eating the same food at the same time. By 1960, extended family Sunday dinners were so common that furniture manufacturers marketed extendable dining tables specifically for the occasion. The table stretched, an extra leaf was inserted, and suddenly there was room for 8 or 10 where 6 usually sat. As families scattered geographically, as grandparents moved to retirement villages and children moved for work, the 3-generation table shrank. Today, many families see grandparents only on holidays. The weekly gathering that once knitted generations together, that gave children the living memory of their grandparents' manners, stories, and tastes, has become rare. That extendable table leaf sits in the garage, unused. Number 1. The unbroken weekly commitment. Every single Sunday. Not most Sundays. Every Sunday. 52 weeks a year. Rain, snow, heatwave, or illness. There was a roast dinner. This was the tradition that underpinned all the others. The gravy, the carving, the tablecloth, the walk, the pudding. None of it mattered without the fundamental promise that Sunday dinner would happen without fail. Families in the 1950s and the 1960s did not ask what is for dinner on Sunday. They knew. The commitment was so absolute that skipping a roast was a sign something was genuinely wrong. A death in the family, a serious illness, a crisis that could not be cooked through. Otherwise, the oven went on, the joint went in, and the table was laid. That unbroken chain, week after week, year after year, generation after generation, created a rhythm that held families together through everything. Today, Sunday roasts happen when people feel like it. Every other week. once a month, on special occasions. The meal survives. But the commitment, that iron promise that every Sunday would smell, taste, and feel the same, that is the tradition that has vanished most completely of all. These 25 traditions tell a story far bigger than food. They chart the slow unraveling of a weekly ritual that once synchronized an entire nation. From the Saturday trip to the butcher to the Monday leftover supper, the Sunday roast was never just a meal. It was a structure that gave shape to family life, enforced togetherness, and created memories so powerful that people still smell roasting beef when they close their eyes. What replaced it is not bad. Pub roasts are good. Flexibility is good. But what was lost, the rigidity, the formality, the absolute non-negotiable nature of the gathering, cannot be replicated. Leave a comment telling me which tradition your family still keeps. I want to know if the Yorkshire pudding starter survives anywhere. I want to know if anyone still has a dripping bowl. These traditions were not just habits. They were the glue. Most of us did not notice when it dissolved.